Hello everyone, my name is Jatin and I'm the UA lead at Technician. I've been in mobile gaming publishing industry for 3 years now, and I've seen the marketing has evolved a lot in these last 3 years, and I'm really happy to share some of those things here, but also grab something from my co-panelist, and pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Hey everyone, Emre here from Mobile Action. I'm an Apple Ads client partner over at mobileaction/searchads.com. So basically what I do is I help you all to get the most out of Apple Search Ads as much as possible, also help you out with your ASO efforts as well. So yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
All right. So I think the third participant of the panel is not here. So we'll keep on going. So more in a smaller community, so to say. So the first question I would like to start with will be a bit general. So what do you think were the main challenges in 2022 for you bringing users into your games or in general in mobile marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I look at challenges in two things. One is structural and one is more behavioral. By behavioral, I mean it's true. The attention span of people is getting smaller and smaller. We see it with the introduction of social networks like TikTok. Why it's gaining the momentum. It's specifically because you can just scroll new content in next 10 seconds or 5 seconds. If they don't like it, move to another one. Then we have YouTube Shorts that's gaining the momentum. It's specifically because we have lesser and lesser attention span. And what's really it's causing is it's hard to have stronger retention and stronger playtime and all those metrics that we used to have, I would say a year or 2 years ago. And what's really causing because of this is lower LTV, because people are moving to next games faster than they used to. But at the same time, the CPIs are not going down at the same speed. So it's impacting the scale on the games. And when I say about structure, of course, it's related to introduction of privacy threshold by Apple that was released more than a year ago now. Removal of IDFA that limited us to do the UA on many networks, especially the social networks. And we know Google is coming out with something similar. Maybe it's in 1 year, maybe in 2 years. But also we know it's going to be much more lenient than iOS, because we know Google is more ad company compared to Apple, where Apple is more a product-driven company. But still we have to see what they come out with. But it's definitely one of the challenge we are seeing when it comes to taking away the IDFA, and when it comes to targeting the people who are more likely to play our games, and targeting has become much more challenging because of these new privacy thresholds, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. I think we have Tunan here, so let me give the mic over to him.
Hello everybody, I'm from Social Beta. I am the key account manager at Social Beta, and I'm responsible in Israel and Turkey market. And today I will be sharing more information about market insights. Thank you.
So just to go into the first question that Katerina was talking about, so to now you have an idea as well as about the challenges that we're facing right now in 2022. So Jata very brilliantly pointed out, the retention is decreasing, and since the retention is decreasing, we're getting lower LTVs, and people like me who do user acquisition, there's an even larger challenge and a bigger pressure than before to decrease those specific CPIs as much as possible. And there's so much less that we could do, so much less that we can achieve, and inventory is something that is quite very limited. I did talk about the new ad placements, and I would like to argue that Apple is becoming more invested in the services side and the ad side. We do know that Google has been basically the the ironclad kind of force there. But Apple is coming into the market quite very heavily as much as possible with these new ad placements. And they are hiring for a DSP manager now. So that's going to be quite very interesting. I don't know when that's going to be coming out, but the service side is definitely developing. So right now, the basic main problem is I need to achieve a lot of lower CPIs than I was able to do before. And that's quite very challenging, especially in an environment where CPIs are increasing, right? So that results in a lot of problems when it comes to scalability of the particular apps that I'm working with. So that's a main challenge that I'm having in 2022 compared to the previous years. So yeah, let me give it over to Tunahan about this.
Mobile game marketing is very improving, and we see lots of challenges, especially in 2022, especially for Apple's new IDFA policy is very challenging for advertisers. So advertisers should invest in ad creatives more and more and focus on their targeted audiences. And as I see this moment, people are spending less time in comparison with pandemic, because during the pandemic people were spending a lot of time playing games. Right now we see that there are lots of advertisers, but ad creatives are decreasing, and there's a huge drop in ad creatives at the moment. So it's very important to reach the target audience, especially choosing the right ad creatives in the market. And for game developers and publishers to adopt new challenges, especially for IDFA policy, I think they should focus on more and more new channels like networks to attend game acquisition and monetization for their policy.
Thank you. Yeah, we can see that it's not easy times for mobile marketing, definitely. And I would like to come back to the subject which Jatin mentioned about the new regulations from Android. As you know, they introduced a new regulation that from 13th of September, you will not be able to display any interstitial ads during the game session. What's your opinion about that? There are some people who are saying that that's going to kill hyper-casual. Some others are more positive on this side. What's your take on that?
Personally, I think I'm really in the favor of this rollout by Google because it's kind of setting up the standard for the industry because okay, we have been always compliant with this policy of not showing the ads in the middle of the game, because we see the games at the end of the day, they are for entertainment and it has to serve that purpose. And let's be honest, no one likes watching ads. No one says it's good, I saw this ad, So it's not really serving the purpose of the game, and that's why we were even compliant before Google announced this. And also we know there are some maybe some publishers or developers they might be showing the ad in the middle of the game, but really what's happening is people get frustrated with those games, and if they see the ad of the game, they would be thinking okay, these are the games where there are so many ads, I'm not going to download this. So it's basically killing the industry. I would really go on the opposite way. It's a good way. Rather than killing the hyper-casual, it's moving in a good positive direction of building the hyper-casual, where, okay, there are ads that serve the revenue purpose, but also not ads that's annoying for the user and kill the entertainment purpose of the game.
Thank you. What's your opinion, guys?
Well, yeah, it's working? I think so. Okay, cool. So my first thoughts is this is going to be killing hyper-casual. If IDFA didn't kill hyper-casual, nothing else. So I don't really think a 30-second ad is going to be killing the entire industry. But yeah, definitely Jata pointed out as well, the point of the user coming into the app itself is not to watch ads, right? So it is definitely going to be reflected on the retention side of things. If they're going to be forced to watch significantly more ads for longer periods of time, they're going to eventually get frustrated and close down. But let's see how that's going to be affecting on the number side, right? What's going to affect on the monetization side, the revenue side of things. Maybe CPM costs are going to be increasing because of that, because there's going to be less users using it on the playtime is not going to be as long maybe. So there's going to be different challenges that will be coming along, but I think the system is going to adapt as it has been over the past couple of years with all of the changes that are happening. So I'm quite very positive, like Jatel is as well. I do not think that this is going to be killing everything.
For my opinion, I think for monetization, yes, there are lots of, for hyper-casual games, there might be a balance for advertisement on their games. For example, for monetization, it's necessary to have some game advertiser. So I think for monetization, there should be a balance. For example, if people see a lot of ads on your app, so it might be kill your app maybe, but there should be a balance for me, I think.
Thank you. Well, totally agree with you. I think that some subgenres going to be definitely affected more than the others, like idle arcades, for example, where the session length is typically longer, but I think they'll just start to divide it into levels, obligatory, and this most likely will not be a problem. And the second questions will be about ad formats. So typically everyone says that rewarded videos are the most lucrative ones where we gain the most revenue. But maybe there were some changes recently, like how would you compare different ad formats, interstitials, banners, rewarded and playables between each other in terms of profitability?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, historically, we know like interstitial, rewarded, and banner have been like the key ad formats to acquire the people. Like between these three, like mainly it was like interstitial and rewarded that was driving most of the traffic. But like we have seen like Playable as like a new kid on the block. When I say new kid, not because Playable is something new, but I say new kid on the block because more and more publishers are starting to use it in their user acquisition strategy. Not like standalone, but like in conjunction with like being rewarded plus Playable, being interstitial ad plus Playable. So it's being like used together. That's really what we have seen in our perspective, like driving positive ROI in a sense, like if I'm using let's say just rewarded video and it's like a end card, it could be interactive end card. Interactive end card is sort of like a fake Playable where people might think it's a Playable, they click on it like thinking Playable, like they would play the game and they're redirected towards the app store, whereas they wanted to play a game for a while and they just think like, okay, like it's not fair, and that might be driving the conversion rate down. And what's really happening is like if you have lower conversion rate or lower CTR, you might not be winning the bid impressions like that you might be get like if you put like an actual Playable. And that's what something we have seen like driving the user acquisition, like putting like video plus Playable is driving like better ROI and better performance.
Okay, thank you. So, since I don't personally do ad strategy myself, I don't think I would be the best person to answer here, but just from the tools that we have available, and we are able to see about 60 million creatives that are being run in the market, and what I'm able to see, like, my peers have, pointed out, like the playables are definitely something that is catching on a lot of attention. One of the things is just, very usual, and as everyone would know, this is basically like a numbers game. Like that's, something we're going to come to with the fake ads as well. Like conversion rates and stuff could be low, but as long as the pricing is justified at that point, it's still going to be working quite very well. But it basically just allows us, at this point, all of these different variations of ads, rewarded, interstitial, or these playable ads, just gives us significantly more room for, getting additional users for varying different, costs and being able to monetize our game significantly better. So the more is welcome. Playables are definitely a nice welcome to this particular side and for our overall UA strategies and our creative strategies for that matter. But yeah, like we should always be in the looks for new ad placements, new types, anything that we can do to basically grow our game, significantly is, what we should be looking out for.
So, as you mentioned, playable ads are very important for especially hyper-casual games. So when people see playable advertisement, and it gives them it gives them to play more and more. So in the market for especially hyper casual games, we see some ad creatives like Contrast or of role play gaming. We see some people, real active people on the game creatives. So it is very important to get user acquisition from these ad creatives in the market. So that's my only opinion. Thank you.
And what do you guys think about banners? There are some players in the industry which are saying that they're not that profitable. They significantly degrade user experience. And what's your take on that?
I think it really depends on the genre of game, what we have seen. Like if it's an idle game, removing a banner might not impact a lot towards the monetization side of the game, but also removing it can help you really to increase the retention and the playtime. But like if it's a runner game or like a classic hyper casual, what we have seen, like adding the banner can drive the revenue by 10 to 15%. Like I think it really comes down to like if you really want to populate your game with a lot of ads and you're fine with like giving up on 10 to 15% of an additional revenue, yes, go ahead with it. Like you can remove the banner, but like in our point of view, like it really depends on the genre of game. And we have like some games where we have banner, whereas we have some game where we don't use banner ads at all. So it's something like you have to be agile. You have to test it. Like if it's working or not, what's the impact of removing it? What's the impact of having it? So there is no standard answer, I would say. Like you have to test that and see like what's working for your game really.
All right. So yeah, definitely, testing is the key here. When you do remove the banner ads, of course, you're going to be experiencing a drop in revenue simply from the banner ad side of things. But of course, like Jata also told, it's going to be increasing your retention side. So you need to be testing out if the other ad formats that you have in between, like the rewarded ads, etc., are going to be compensating for the revenue loss that you have from the banner ad. For, in certain cases, you're going to be able to see that is going to be, compensating that. But you need to be able to test that out and see it for yourself if it's going to be working well for you or not. At the end of the day, we're all trying to monetize our games as effectively as possible. So you need to try out that and play around with the ratios of retention and the monetization side of things. Whatever makes you the most amount of money is basically going to be the best answer here. So the way to learn that is always going to be by testing it and trying to see it for yourself and see how your user base is reacting to the changes that you're doing. Great way to test this out, of course, is while in the soft launch phase and kind of basically looking into that and seeing how your audience is reacting to certain changes that you're making in the app itself.
For me, in the testing part especially, it is very important to check what your competitor is doing. For example, by using an ad intelligence tool, it helps you to identify some CPC, CPA values for each country. So in a testing process, when you check a tool like this, you can have an idea and you can check which country you can test your ad. So for example, I know there are some countries, especially in the USA, the CPC and CPA values are very high. But it also gives an insight what people like in those countries and what people don't like. So that's all for me. In the meantime, I was also planning to make a presentation about it, but maybe later I will do it.
All right. And the next question will be regarding comparing platforms for scaling games. Obviously, we can see that in 2022, most of tests, for obvious reasons, were conducted on Android. But as far as scaling games is concerned, how would you compare those two platforms, like Android and iOS?
It's true, like what we have seen, like more and more games are tested initially on Android, but also about the soft launch when it comes down to it, like they have been performed on Android. And I can say like historically, like it has been, we would be soft launching or testing on both iOS and Android like separately. But that's not the case now, like specifically because of like the lack of user behavior data we are missing on iOS now. And what's really happening is like people are using, including us, like the data we are collecting from the Android users as the benchmark, whether it's coming down to creatives, like what's working on the creative side. On iOS, we don't have this visibility, like what's the IPM and what people are liking and which creative is getting what spend. And as we know, like creative, like I like to say, like it's like a fuel of a car, like it's a fuel of the campaign. And if you don't get that right, like there's no way, like you would be do the scaling of your game. And that's why, like we also moved to the Android side. And I would also like to point out, like before the introduction of IDFA, like removal of IDFA or introduction of SCAD, 60% of our margin, if it's one title, was coming from iOS, while 40% would be from Android, like roughly. But this is like changed now. Like what we are seeing is like 60% is on Android and 40 or 50% on iOS. But it's definitely changing because like some new and supportive changes are coming up on iOS side, like introduced by Apple. What we have seen with iOS 15, Apple has agreed to share the data with the publishers directly, whereas it was shared only with the networks in the past. So now, with the access to the raw data, we can actually see like what networks or the MMP is reporting is right or not. And also, like recently, Apple agreed to share like the bundle IDs of the subsources where your game is being publicized or where the ROI stands, like when you are doing the UA. So what we have seen, like definitely, like that 60-40 split from Android, it's starting to move towards Apple. Because of these positive changes. But also like a lot of A/B testing with ATT pop-up is also driving some positive result, because why scaling became challenging on iOS was like 50% or 60% people were opting out to share the IDFA. And we know like there's a difference of 25 to 30% in the ARPDAU or LTV of people who opt for IDFA versus people who don't opt for IDFA. But this is not the same case when you are doing the acquisition, like the CPI side, it remains the same. So if you have like 20-25% going down in your LTV, but your CPI stands the same, definitely like it becomes a challenging part when it comes down to like, scaling your game on iOS. And of course, like on Android, also you have access to a lot more UA sources or UA networks. You can do a good mix between video sources and social sources like TikTok, Facebook. Not saying you cannot do on iOS, but it's a bit more tricky because of the SCAD. Like you have to understand like if you can really trust the SCAD data that Apple is sharing, while on Android this is not the case. So yeah, I mean also what we saw post IDFA privacy change when people moved to Android, the CPIs on Android also started to increase because of the competition. Of course, there's a limited inventory, and everyone is moving on Android like to test their game or to soft launch their game, and it increased the CPI by 25 to 30% when this happened. And at the same time, like there was less demand on the iOS side for a short while. Over there, like people had the opportunity, but people were just scared, like on the marketing side, like we don't know about this privacy change, how to adapt to it. And but now publishers are moving and trying to leverage upon that lower CPI we have for a short while. But I think it's going to change moving forward, because more and more people are starting to get testing back on iOS, getting the soft launches back on iOS. So I would say like it was like for a short while, but it's not gonna sustain for like, let's say 6 months from now or 8 months from now. I think it's gonna be a 50-50 split between iOS and Android.
All right, awesome. So it basically boils down, in my opinion, to what kind of data is available for the Android side and the iOS side, as Jetta explained as well. So the main reason why Android had a significantly higher percentage, in the recent times is because of the recent changes that happened. We're not really able to see all of the details on the iOS side. I'm not able to create a strategy with all of the information points that I would normally have before. So that was the main challenge that we had to overcome. But what I'm seeing also, since I'm basically handling Apple Search as operations as well, and I do know from a lot of our partners, what they're doing is there's a significant share of their volume of their efforts, of their user acquisition efforts, moving over to the iOS side and to Apple-related, ads platform, Apple Search Ads in this particular instance, right? Simply because of the reason, the same limitations that you would have with SCAD with other paid channels like Facebook, etc., is not necessarily that much applicable on the search ad side. You're not really subject to that. You can do the specific targeting within ad groups, etc., like I did explain in the morning as well. It just requires a personalized ads opt-in at that point, and you're going to be able to do specific targeting accurately according to what Apple has. So since that's one of the cases, it's helping the users definitely. There's a few extra additional tools that are in there for like testing other variations, etc., like product page optimization, etc. That's just came out with iOS 15, and yeah, we're seeing that Apple's becoming significantly more aggressive on the ads field. So I definitely do think that the distribution for the Apple to Android side is going to be leaning more towards the Apple side, simply because of the reason that per user it has a significantly higher potential of generating more revenue per user that is in your app. They're more likely to make purchases. They're more likely to purchase the no ads version of the game compared to an Android user. Also, just a couple of things to mention here. The biggest markets that we usually have, the US in this instance, and the hyper-casual games that we're kind of targeting the audience, since like everyone know that a large majority of the audience that we're servicing would be towards more so like the teenagers, young adults, etc. That will be the very dominant side, and almost like 88% of all of the teenagers in the US have an iPhone right now. So it basically shows me, and their brand loyalty carries out to adulthood as well. So moving forward, I do think definitely that there's going to be more of a lean towards the Apple side, and that will be increasing, especially with the competition increasing, and especially with Android's new privacy changes that might be coming out in a year or two. Once that happens, I think it's going to be favoring the Apple side significantly more, because Apple, Google was kind of forced into applying some similar standards that Apple put into place before.
So for this question, especially as I mentioned before my speech, there's new policy from iOS and IDFA advertiser policy. More and more advertisers are choosing Android to promote their ads, but we can see a very significant decrease on iOS platform for advertisers. For this, I think game developer and advertisers should focus on, as I mentioned before, and more channels to promote their ads, and they should adapt new changes quickly. We see still this effect. I think it's IDFA policy announced last year, this time, and still there are lots of challenges for this policy. Last year, there were more advertisers on iOS platform. Right now, we see a very decreasing number on iOS platform. So there are lots of challenges for this, but I think for this policy, we will see new challenges in the market.
Right. And another very important topic we would like to cover today is actually the creatives to attract users to your games. And of course, like there are always those good old tricks like fail gameplay, which always work. But maybe in 2022, you've spotted some new tendencies, new tips, how to boost the marketability of your game. What should you use in creatives? Do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, definitely, I agree. Like creatives are like a key integral part of any campaign, and especially on the iOS side now, because that's the only lever we have we can pull to increase the performance of any campaign. But when it comes down to trends, like yes, like fail and new versus pro and all that trends, like they have been like trending from some time. But like what we have seen or what we are trying to do from our perspective is like making inclusive ads. What I mean by that is like the audience of hypercasual is broad. It's meant for everyone and anyone who wants to play the game, which also includes the people who might be struggling to read. They might not be able to read, or they might be deaf, they might not be able to hear. So what I mean by that is like making sure like there's a text layout in your creatives that's readable for the people who might not be able to read like easily. They might have to zoom on the screen if you put like some hard to read text format. And also like historically what we have seen, like we are doing the marketing of the game without any subtitles. So what it's really doing, like we have an audience like who might be not good with their hearing capabilities. So having a subtitle can really help over there. And to be honest, like networks, they are starting to realize that, and their algorithms are starting to take that into consideration. Like if you don't put the headline or like subtitle or something like that, it's possible like your ad might not be shown to that certain audience type because like you might not know your audience, but Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, they definitely know their audience, like who is who. And if you don't like incorporate those changes, who serves those audience, you might be missing out on a big chunk of audience over there. But also one trend we have seen on the creative is like with influencers, which really mean is like showing your face, like the creative like economy of like whether it's on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, there is like more and more content being generated on daily basis. And what people want is like to see the face with whom they can relate or to whom they can trust on when they are watching an ad. So I would say like working with influencers and like incorporating them in your creative strategy can definitely play out like quite nicely.
So for ad creatives, we can see lots of new trending, especially for RPG role-play games. We can see lots of influencers are all on the top on the advertisement. So first, ad creative starts with real people, and there's a short story from real people, and after that we can see a part from the game, and it really attracts audiences, especially for role-play games. And for hyper-casual games, we can see different trends. For hyper-casual game creatives, there are lots of things. For example, we can see failure. So, for example, in one creative, when we see failure, it attracts people. It attracts users to correct the failure in the ad creative. So also it attracts users to play and more. So those ad creatives are very popular at this moment, and so.
All right. So thank you very much. And as you have mentioned, a lot of creatives are using the cinematics, like kind of a real-world video before, in order to boost the attractiveness of it. And some advertisers actually go even further. They make the whole cinematics, like the Unity, the whole movie, basically small movie made in Unity. It's not in the game, but it uses game characters, and it shows them in a more like juicy, interesting way, in a more dynamic way probably. So, and that's actually shows that advertisers are investing more in their creatives. So the process of making creatives becomes more and more complicated. So would you say it's better to invest into that? And it's worth actually making more complicated ads with those cinematics and stuff, or should we rather use good old tricks like, I don't know, misleading ads, fail gameplays? They work as well. What's your opinion on that?
We personally don't use cinematic ads specifically because we see it as like a misleading ad. Like it might look good, visually appealing. Like if I'm looking at the video itself, like okay, I might find like intrigue to click on the ad and go to the app store. But what's really happening over there is like you might get a good CTR when people are moving to app store and they see the product page. It's not even close to what you are putting in the ad. It's going to drive down the CVR. And that's really what really happening is like it's bring down the CPM as well. And the networks might not be giving a priority in a waterfall of bidding to your ad. And also, I think it can have an impact on the game metrics as well. Let's say like someone even downloads the app, like regardless of what the App Store page is saying, and they play the game for like a minute and they say like it's nowhere close to the ad I saw, and they're just gonna uninstall the app. And that's what really happens. Like I put like cinematic ads in the category of misleading ads, and it's really like you're wasting the CPI you put in the acquisition. Like you're not gonna get the value worth of that cost. And yeah, I mean, like, I'm not really someone championing in the misleading ads or like cinematic ads, in my opinion, at least.
Okay. So, I mean, this is not my field specifically, but I have a few ideas on that. So the cinematic ads are definitely something that has a significantly higher cost of production, right? In that particular instance. And the kind of field that we are in, we're trying to achieve those kind of like low CPIs as much as possible. One thing, that my peers have, mentioned in this particular case has been, okay, I'm putting the cinematic out there, but it's nowhere close to the game itself, and the complication of the game is not going to be able to reach that cinematic level, right? Like as we were kids, at some point, we saw the cinematics of many games that we saw, and we were pretty much disappointed when we saw the game back in like 2002, 2003. Like most of you would know, like Age of Empires, 2 cinematic, one of the first that you've seen, nowhere near what the game's graphics was back in the day. So just because of the sheer point of view of the production value being high, so the cost of it being high, and the kind of limited space that you're going to be able to show that, it's going to be resulting in a quite very expensive experience for you, most likely not going to be working that very well. And I agree with Jatel in this instance that it's going to be something that I could consider in the fake ads kind of section. One of the things that it could be working in certain cases could be, again, something that he mentioned was, the influencer marketing side of things. One example that I could give, the Mr. Beast featuring for Brawl Stars specifically with a Squid Game related thing. And creating like a cinematic ad for that specifically within the video, etc. That generated a lot of revenue because not necessarily it wasn't an ad in an app. It was something quite very different and was made for that particular purpose. So that's why it worked. So, but for the more generic sense, I really do not think it's worth the effort to put in cinematic ads.
All right, and getting to the also very interesting question. So in this unstable 2022, what would you pinpoint like the most interesting sources of traffic for marketers, both in terms of video networks or social media?
I would say like having a mix of both is an interesting proposition because that's really how you're gonna scale your game. But of course, like when it comes down to iOS, it might be a bit more trickier than diversifying to the social networks. Like of course, like but there are like networks like Apple Search Ads that's like really been picking up on the iOS side. So there are like definitely some options on the iOS side too to compensate for the social aspect, like social networks aspect. But also like something I really like to say is like there are network sources that's really picking up recently is like play to earn sort of networks, like of course, like this is a term like a bit more related to the NFT side of the business, like metaverse and like all those sort of games. But there are like also some US sources that's really like been incorporated in this ecosystem for a while. What's really happening over there is like you're paying the user to complete like certain engagement inside the game, and they're rewarded for that. And they are rewarded in their static, like a fiat currency, like which is more interesting than someone getting paid in crypto in the NFT world. So these are the sources that's really like, in my opinion, like taking over in the recent time. But also something interesting is CTV, which is like really showing the ad on TVs, OTT platforms. This is something was inaccessible to the gaming companies because like you wouldn't get the 50-cent CPI or 60-cent CPI back in the time, but now like with introduction of Netflix willing to show ads to its users, we have Hotstar, we have Disney, like all of those platforms are willing to have the subscription model, which is like half ads and half of their, like, you know, they're watching some movie or some TV show, or it could be whatever. But what's driving is like in this economy, we know in a sad time, like people are like facing the inflation, and more people, this is just my opinion, like there is no data to prove it, but more and more people might be moving towards like the subscription model on Netflix, Hotstar, where they are okay to watch some ads, and it just opens up more and more inventory on the CTV side. And of course, there are some challenges when it comes down to using the CTV networks. It's related to the attribution side, because it's something really new when it comes down to advertising of mobile games, but definitely something to watch out for. Like end of this year or next year, I think it's going to be taking some traction for sure.
Yeah, all right. So since I'm working with Apple searches, I do know the kind of like the impact of it for the scaling side of things. So that's something that I'm quite very excited about, especially with the new ad placements as well that are, you know, going to be coming out at that side. Something quite very new that we're going to be testing out and seeing the kind of results together. But definitely on the iOS side of things, you know, one of the major challenges is since we do not have that much data, we're not really able to target everything as accurately as we want. Basically, we can't target according to the intent because we put in the keywords, and that's how we basically make the ad in that particular place. So we know that that person has the intent to make that kind of a specific search and land on your ad. Then you can basically see the metrics after that point. Once you incorporate the MMP data in there as well. So that's one of the fields that are going to be quite very interesting, and it's going to be increasing. I'm very much looking forward to the DSP side of things for Apple. They did try out an ad network back in the day, and it failed quite very miserably. So I don't know how that's going to be performing, but I think it's a different time now, and I think it's going to be working quite very well. We're going to basically wait and see. But just to not be that gloomy with this kind of current environment that we're in, just one thing that I would, like to remind everyone is that COVID hit, everyone was at home, usage times of the apps increased drastically. The kind of CPM costs that you were saying for like either giving ads or the revenue that we're generating was decreasing very rapidly during that particular time. So despite what kind of macro events are happening, I don't think that the kind of market that we're in is going to be affected by the same kind of standards that other industries will be. So as long as people have phones in their pockets and they have additional time, either being laid off from their jobs or, basically being home because of a pandemic globally, we're going to be finding a way to make it work for us. So yeah, that's what I think about the specific subject.
I think for me there are lots of networks which advertisers should adopt, especially for these new challenges. They should find new ways to find new networks to promote their advertisement. Especially in different countries, there are some popular networks especially, and they should adopt these networks. For example, in Middle East, when we check the Middle East, we can see TikTok is getting very popular. So in this network, people are spending a lot of time, and it's might be a good target to find audience in this market. And especially for Facebook and Instagram, there are lots of advertisement. Those channels are very popular, and As I said, it's very important to focus on as many networks as possible and get data from those networks to adapt your advertising policy.
Yeah, it's working. Nice. Let's wrap up with a more general question. So, what, in your opinion, are the do's and don'ts of mobile advertisement in 2020? Maybe there are some things which used to work, but now it's a no-go, or vice versa. You would advise everyone to do one particular thing. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, like we mentioned briefly about misleading ads, like for me, like it's a no-go, especially because like it doesn't work. It might be bringing down like a bit of a low CPI in the beginning, but it's not gonna bring the LTV that you might be needing to be ROI positive. So also like just build upon that, like we know when it comes down to seasonality, like whether it's Christmas or like Easter or like any other holidays, people change, like all the publishers, they are incorporating like Santa in their creatives or like playing around with Christmas theme. And of course, like it's good like on paper to like see all that like incorporating in the ads, but again, like it falls into misleading ads for me. If someone like watches a Santa in an ad and they go to the App Store page, they are not seeing a Santa, they are not downloading the app. Like it's that's really what we have seen from our side. Like we tried and tested like all of that and didn't really reap the benefits we were expecting. Also, what I would say is like being inclusive in making the ads. Like you briefly mentioned about it, like previously, like making sure like you understand the motivation of each of your player, like which comes down with testing the creative. Like you might think like fail theme is working, it's in trend, but maybe the audience type of your game might not be relating with fail theme. You have to really understand what's their motivation. Is it like just to kill some time, like 5 minutes of time, or is it like something like they want to achieve something inside the game? Or like you need to understand, and it comes down by testing different like sort of creatives. So I would say like understanding the motivation is a big go. Like misleading ads, according to me, it's a no-go. And yeah, I will rest there.
All right. So my main thing is, definitely do testing and definitely do that. Constantly try to understand your audience better. Do not forget about your organic efforts. Definitely play around with your metadata. Play around with the keywords that you're utilizing your product page. Definitely test out different creatives, different product pages on occasional points, especially in an environment with increased costs. This is going to be saving you quite a bit of money in the long run. You're not going to be reaping rewards in terms of like suddenly changing the metadata and increasing your total kind of like number of installs by like 50% all of a sudden. That's not going to be happening. But definitely do not forget about the organic side. It does benefit you to play around with the keywords, look at the search volumes, look at your rankings. Definitely incorporate that and try to be efficient as possible, especially in this day and age.
So as I mentioned before, after the pandemic, during the pandemic, there were lots of people playing mobile game apps. But after the pandemic, we see there's no more advertisement. So there's a decreasing number for advertisement creatives. So in this matter, there's a big competition in the market. So it's very important, it's very crucial to check what your competitor is doing, because in the market, as I mentioned, there's a big competition especially after the pandemic. So it's highly crucial to check what your competitor is doing in which countries, and maybe it's also important to check cost intelligence and to adapt new challenges by checking what your competitor is doing, especially for gender, for age. You should you should have a plan to target your specific audiences. So you could say my game can be for like this category, my game for this ages, and you should really adapt. You should really check those kind of primary things and that would really help. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your valuable insights. And I think we have a couple of minutes for questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, please go on.
Maybe some recommendations.
Yeah. Some.
Yeah, I mean, like from my side, I would say, of course, like CPIs are important, but like we should be moving from the mentality of CPI to the ROAS. Like we have like more and more networks, like whether it's Google, Unity, or AppLovin or Iron Source, they all have like the ROAS campaign types. Over there, like we would have like 2x, sometimes it could be even 3x of the CPI that you would be targeting on a CPI campaign, but you can still have a ROAS, even a better ROAS with the higher CPIs. So I would say like don't be judging the marketability of the game just by the CPI. Like of course that was a thing in the past, but now like the networks are more smart. They have the data of like the user base who is more aligned towards the hyper casual or your game type. So definitely like we should be focusing on the ROAS when it comes to like optimization rather than just the CPI.
I don't really know right now. Like I'm trying to think about something. I did talk about like quite a few things today in the previous speech as well. But yeah, I agree with Jatal. Yes, like do ROAS optimization. That does work out quite very well. I definitely do agree about that point. Like, do not be just reliant on the CPI side of things. Like Jatal said, like you're able to track a lot more information now. You're able to get the purchases. You're able to see the subscriptions. You can see how profitable you are. And I've seen many cases in the campaigns that I have been managing personally is that there are significantly higher CPAs, even so much so that it's 100% more, but the ROAS is 150% more, despite that cost being higher. So at the end of the day, if you're in the positive, if you're making significantly more money compared to what you were doing before, despite higher costs, that's what it matters. And that's how you're going to be scaling up. So rather than having a CPI goal in this instance, definitely focusing on ROAS, that would be a good thing. Yeah.
For me, for small-sized and middle-sized game developers and publishers, it's very crucial to get the data from market because market is changing dramatically. There's a big change in the market. Trends are changing day by day. So for small and for middle-sized advertisers and developers, it's very important because when you make a promotion, you have a small budget and you should make your promotion wisely. So for me, they should keep checking market trends, competitor analysis, and lots of data.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating in this panel. It was very informative. I think everyone learned something new. Thank you.